CR is very tremendous impact in Paraguay, especially for the leadership training we had last July.
And it's been a big deal to a lot of the pastors and the different people that serve in ministries with us, that serve with people that have addiction problems. And it's opened up a lot to us, and we're super excited, and we love the training, and we're looking forward to having y'all come down next year and help us do it with children.
Those are my friends. Hi, everybody. I am a grateful believer in Jesus. I struggle with codependency and anxiety, and my name's Kathy. Hi, everybody. So Paraguay, these were the missionaries at Paraguay, and what an experience. I was able to participate in this amazing mission trip. And to be honest with you, I felt like I was unqualified, and I had no way to pay. But God told me to go. I didn't know how this was going to work out, but someone anonymously paid my way to go. I still don't know who it was. If you're here, I tell you thank you, because it really changed my life. It was really cool because I got to go to a different country. I got to see the Andes Mountains, and I got to see a different culture, so that was really cool. But the mission trip was amazing because we went and we just taught our program to the preachers, teachers, and missionaries for them to teach it to their people. So it was an amazing experience. And we visited a recovery program that was there in Paraguay that was going on. There was a husband and wife team that was the only people trying to do this program, and it made me appreciate all the support that we have at RCR, because we have a core leadership and we have a lot of people that help, and we have a huge support from St. Matthew's, and it's amazing. So we got to sit in on their groups, and I was in the group that the wife taught, and it was for the family members of the addicts, and then all the people that had addiction problems were with the husband. So I didn't see what went on there, but in our group, we saw a couple come in, a mother and father, and they were just looking for hope because they were so concerned about their child. And they came into this meeting, and we can't understand what they're saying. We don't have an interpreter for everything people are talking about, especially when it's personal things, but you could feel it. And they were just felt like they were worn out. And I watched how how some of the people really were supportive and encouraging to this the newcomers. And there was one couple especially that really seemed to be ministering to them, and we found out that that couple, they had lost their child to addictions, but they kept coming because they had had a family, a community of people that understand, and it helps them with their grief, and they have something to give back. And here they were ministering to this couple who were so concerned about their child. It was an amazing experience, and it was really interesting was how much this couple was so appreciative to be able to have new tools and a new way to be more supportive, because they looked like they were worn out trying to do this by themselves. They were actually having people come and live in their homes when they were homeless. They were trying to do everything. So they were very interested in this program, and they seemed so grateful for us to be there to help them to be involved in it, and they wanted to start right away. So it was totally cool. And so I wanted to tell you about them. We could see how some of the people had struggles, but they also had progress. When we were there, we started a step study, which was step 1. And there's 4 books that goes through the 12 steps. So we just did part of the step study with the group of people that were learning CR. And step 1 is we admitted we were powerless over addictions and compulsive behaviors, that our lives had become unmanageable. So we go through step 1 and principle 1, and we read some things and Bible verses that support it. And then you answer questions, that's all. So we answered questions with, these were teachers, missionaries, preachers. I'm like, I'm just Kathy, but we're all answering the same questions. And it's interesting how you start seeing how much you have in common with each other. Every step study I go through, I see people in a deeper way. I feel like I'm closer to them. So anyway, we went through this thing, and again, it was step one, and their culture was different. However, we're the same kind of people. They had the same kind of hurts. It seemed to me like the women's group, like they never talk about their past. It's not something they do. And to answer these questions brought out things, and you could see healing like right away. It was amazing, and they were ready to just keep going. So this was an amazing thing that we were able to be part of this. I feel like it's like a little flicker of a light, of a candle or something, and I was a little flicker that went into this to teach them CR so that they could have CR for their community and keep teaching it and growing it. And I got to be a little flicker of what started this, and I'm just honored, humbled, and just really privileged that I got to do that. And that's only because of people that helped me get there. While I was there, I became super close to the leaders that went with us. When you stay with people, morning and night, if they snore, different things. We had really interesting experiences, and sometimes we laughed so hard I couldn't catch my breath. I bonded so much with my leaders, and some that I didn't know very well, and now it's like, these are my brothers. And it was just really an amazing experience, and to know God was working all through it. Another thing was I felt like I didn't have much to offer, and I gave my testimony. I was one of the last ones to give a little mini testimony to the group while we were going through the training, and it was interesting how each one of our testimonies were different, but it was such a great range. It felt like it fell together like a perfect glove, and it touched different people with different testimonies, and it related to different people by the different things we shared. It just seemed like the whole thing was the Holy Spirit, God, all over it, and my heart's so full. I'll never be the same from that experience. So I just want to say I'm thankful that I got to be part of that. So as a CR leader at CR, sometimes I give lessons. Now I want you to know that I have codependency, so I worry about what everybody thinks. So I have total stage fright and overthink everything, and to do a lesson would be impossible. But somehow I do it, and I compare myself to other people who do the lessons, and I'm like, but they do it so well, and I just have to be willing to do it. And then sometimes God gives me ideas, and I try to do research and do a little slideshow, and sometimes I'll put interesting things on there, like maybe a slide of a kitty cat or something funny, because I want to make it interesting. But I do my own little thing with the lessons, and just a couple weeks ago I did step 1, denial. And it's a funny thing how sometimes when you give a lesson, many times the lesson that you're doing helps yourself. It seems like I need this right now in my own life struggle. So God gave me the idea of denial as like your car's stuck in the mud. And I'll be honest with you, I felt kind of stuck in the mud this last year. I shared different ways in the lesson how you might be in denial. There's the obvious one. People hear Celebrate Recovery and you think of drugs and alcohol and these addictions that people have that are really hard. And it's really great that it helps us with these things. And a lot of times when they have these kind of issues, people will say, I know there's a problem, but I can fix it myself. So I thought of that like if you need a tow truck and you called the tow company and they asked what's going on and you'd be like, well, I have a problem, but really I can take care of it myself. It's like, why are you even calling us? And maybe that's what it's like sometimes when we pray to God, when we're not really willing to let him help us. So anyway, that is one kind of denial, when we realize we need God's help. Some of us actually experience victory over these addictions as we go to CR, but by continually seeking God in all our affairs, we discover other issues, hurts, and fears. So personally, in my past, I really struggled with my past. I felt stuck in the mud, by the shame of my past. It was full of bad choices. I was constantly trying to explain to anyone who would listen to me how nothing bad in my life was my own fault. I'd always been mistreated. Nothing was ever fair, and I was always the victim. I found freedom from a lot of this past pain by going through step studies. I learned to admit my part of the problems, and that was really hard for me. Many times it was rooted by being involved with unhealthy relationships. I did learn to forgive others and even forgive myself most of the time, and now my past has less power over me, to the glory of God. So we can also be in denial of our fears of the future, which causes anxiety and worry. So I don't know if any of you can relate to anxiety and worry, but it's a big issue in my life. I still struggle with worrying about ones I love. I've had a lot of chaos this year with people that I love, that I worry about them. But when I come to CR, it constantly reminds me to cast my burdens on the Lord and simply pray for them. And I need to be reminded of it constantly. So I also discovered this last year that I needed to surrender a particular fear. This is a fear of being homeless. Living check to check, I often said I'm one missing paycheck from being homeless again. Now, I don't want you to think that I've ever lived under a bridge or lived in the streets, but I've had friends who have, but I never did. But multiple times in my past, I lost my home, finding myself with no place of my own, going maybe from couch to couch, living in my car, and many times I rented people's dining rooms. It's like they didn't have an extra bed. I'd be like, can I rent your dining room? It's such a feeling of being lost to not have a safe place to call your own home. But see, now God has blessed me with a home, and I love it, but I lived in fear of losing it. I knew if I ever lost my job, I'd never be able to catch up my bills, I'd have no hope, and I'd lose my home. But that was a lie. Guess what happened? I lost my job. Last March on my own. After losing my job, I would have given up. After the employment ended, I would have relapsed, I'm sure. I would have drowned in depression and tried to find someone to take care of me. I'm sure the opportunity of bad choices were numerous. I either would have moved a wrong person in, or I would have moved out and just let my home go. But that's not what happened. You see, I'm not actually on my own anymore. I'm a child of God. I belong to this family of believers. I needed to admit my fears and that most of the time I felt overwhelmed with trying to pay bills and finding a job. The Serenity Prayer helped me a lot. It's one of my favorite tools. I can't, to change what I can. Asking and trusting God to make all things right if I surrender to His will. So that means even if I lose my home, I am not going to be homeless. This fear is gone from me now. I just needed to be willing to move if it's His will. But I really didn't want to move. I wanted to stay in my home. So what I did, I spoke about my feelings and fears in small group meetings to my sponsor, and I didn't keep them stuffed inside or in the dark. With the light shining on my fears, it had less power over me. I was never alone. I never was without hope, and I never relapsed. I have God always, and I know I'm loved and accepted by my forever family. Another great tool is being grateful. I've been grateful for many blessings through this journey. Friends, family, church, and St. Matthew's. My bills have stayed current all year. I have no idea how that happened because it makes no sense to me when I do the math. I don't care. It's my testimony. And last Wednesday, well, first I did get a part-time job, which wasn't enough to cover the bills, but I loved my job and I'm grateful for it. I just got a call last Wednesday that I've been hired for a job. This job will work around my commitment to church and Monday and Friday night CR meetings and also my monthly game nights. So, which I love. So the struggle has been really hard, and the blessings and the hardship are actually mind-blowing. God's so faithful, and many here today are part of that blessing, and I thank you. I one thing I'm grateful for is I was unemployed the whole summer. So this gave me time to spend with friends and family. It gave me time to co-lead a step study that was just amazing. And I was given dog sitting jobs. These felt like a mini vacation instead of work. And one of them even included a massage chair. This is crazy. Everything's great. I gave time to others by giving rides to church, helping people with laundry. But every time I gave, I got so much more back. I became closer to many of my friends and was blessed with ice cream and lunches. I'd had a flat tire. My church bought me a new tire. I'd be out of gas. Someone would slip me some money. So many blessings. But that trip to Paraguay was more than I could believe. That was my experience of a lifetime. I'm humble and grateful. I also feel the feeling of belonging. I belong in my weakness, flaws, and brokenness. I'm accepted and loved. I want to especially mention Christmas. St. Matthew's Baby Boomer Sunday School class invited me for a breakfast with them. And it was really great to spend time with this wonderful group of people, and it was a delicious breakfast. And they gave me a gift that morning. After breakfast, I opened the gift in my car, and I just sat and wept. I had no idea how I was going to pay the bills that week. I was like, surely every time it's like, but how am I going to do it this time and this time? And I really had no idea how it was going to work out. But the generous gift they gave me covered my bills, and it was totally unbelievable. And I want to publicly thank them for being part of my story. So I also want to say, if you don't identify with a particular struggle for CR, I encourage you to come to CR anyway as outreach for St. Matthew's. I know many attendees have ended up making St. Matthew's their home church. We're all the church, and I encourage more connection between St. Matthew's and our CR ministry. You could join us for dinner and show how the church is made of wonderful, loving people that you are. They just don't know it. You could invite them to your service and get-togethers. Come celebrate with us in our service as we worship the Lord together and learn to grow closer to God. Join our small groups just to listen. Being heard is a huge part of recovery for people who hurt and struggle. And everyone is personally invited by me to our fun game nights we have every month. Games are fun, and it gives us that family feeling. Even kids come and play games with us. Many friendships have developed by St. Matthew's providing us a place to have good, clean, sober fun, and we thank you. We're the church, and many people need the church to help discover God's love. So thank you, and now I want to introduce you to someone very special to me. Tracy has been my CR sister since I first started coming here at St. Matthew's. We've become very close as CR leaders, and by having years together in small groups. However, she was our step study leader this last summer, and these classes really bonded us together in a very special way. She is one of my favorite sisters, and I'm honored to introduce our training coach, Tracy.
Thank you, sister. Good morning. If you have your Bible and would like to follow along, I'm going to read from Luke chapter 7, starting in verse 36. One of the Pharisees asked him to eat with him, and he went into the Pharisee's house and reclined at table. And behold, a woman of the city, who was a sinner, when she learned that he was reclining at table in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster flask of ointment, and standing behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears and wiped them with the hair of her head and kissed his feet and anointed them with ointment. Now when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would have known who and what sort of woman this is who is touching him, for she is a sinner. And Jesus answering said to him, Simon, I have something to say to you. And he answered, say it, teacher. A certain moneylender had 2 debtors. One owed 500 denarii and the other 50. When they could not pay, he canceled the debt of both. Now which of them will love him more? And he said to him, the one, I suppose, for whom he canceled the larger debt. And he said to him, you have judged rightly. Skipping to verse 47. Therefore, I tell you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much, but he who is forgiven little loves little. Hi, I am a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, and I struggle with codependency, sexual purity, and a critical spirit, and my name is Tracy. Hi. I can relate to the Pharisee in that story. For most of my life, I was a self-righteous Christian who judged others for their sins that were surely worse than my own. But then, I can also relate to the woman in that story because I have made many sinful choices. Shortly after coming to Celebrate Recovery, God showed me that I struggle with codependency. One simple definition of codependency is on the screens, or will be soon. Codependency is when a person's need for approval or validation from another person allows them to be controlled or manipulated, or a person who attempts to manipulate or control someone. They are willing to compromise their own values and choices and behavior at the expense of their personal well-being. The next 2 slides show some common characteristics of codependency that I can relate to. Through Celebrate Recovery, I realize that for much of my life, I was driven by a desire to please others, especially a guy, in order to feel loved and valued. Codependency and my tendency towards sexual sin caused me to compromise my God-given values for purity numerous times throughout my life, and to stay in unhealthy relationships so that I could feel loved and affirmed. Before Celebrate Recovery, I lived in denial that my choices to seek validation and love from others greatly contributed to my unhealthy relationships, and that I attempted to control other people so that I wouldn't lose a relationship. I felt like a victim, and I felt powerless to change. Through Celebrate Recovery, I am learning how my past hurts and insecurities caused me to form codependent habits, such as being afraid to talk with someone when they hurt me, for fear of their anger or for losing their love, or saying yes when asked to help someone, even though I really didn't have the bandwidth to help, because I was fearful about what others would think of me if I didn't help. I'm learning that my motives matter, and to rest in God's unconditional love for me, and to trust Him with my relationships with others. One of the characteristics common of people who struggle with codependency is a tendency to judge oneself very harshly, striving to be perfect. For most of my life, that critical spirit extended to others also. I lived like a Pharisee, looking down on others or judging others whose sins were different from my own. And I hurt the people around me, just as I had been hurt. But then I experienced God's grace amidst my own wretched sin, and I learned to love Him more deeply as I experienced His truly unconditional love for me. At Celebrate Recovery, I get to hear every week how God transforms the lives of other people who have been deeply wounded but redeemed by God. Hearing their stories fuels my desire to break free from judging others and to love and to have the love and compassion for them that Jesus has for them. John 1:14 says, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory, glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth." I want to be like Jesus, full of grace and truth. And I believe that Celebrate Recovery helps me to practice that. One of the 8 principles of Celebrate Recovery is openly examine and confess my hurts, hang-ups, and habits to myself, to God, and to someone I trust. At Celebrate Recovery, I and others can be honest about our sin struggles and receive encouragement and accountability from people that we trust. This month, our pastors have been preaching about apprenticeship or discipleship and what it means to be a follower of Jesus Christ. I would suggest to you that the 12 steps and the 8 principles that you should have received this morning when you walked in on your sermon notes are tools that can help anyone learn how to follow Jesus. Celebrate Recovery can help with any kind of hurt, hang-up, or habit. It is not just for those who struggle with drugs and alcohol. Maybe you struggle with anger or worry or needing the approval of others. Maybe it's gossip or a food issue or self-harm or unforgiveness or impatience. At Celebrate Recovery, we invite you to bring the truth into the light by sharing it with God and others, to examine the root causes of your behavior, your character defects, and to experience the freedom in knowing that God knows you in truth, and he loves you, and he can give you the power to break free from whatever is keeping you from a deeper relationship with him and others. St. Matthew Church, I am incredibly grateful to you for your support of Celebrate Recovery. I have been a Christian for most of my life, but this ministry has truly changed my life. Thank you for letting me share. And now I get the pleasure of introducing Amanda Aaron and Sarah Huller, who will share with us about a ministry for the children of those who come to Celebrate Recovery.
Hi, I'm Amanda, and this is Sarah, and we take care of the kids. So we go to Celebration Place, and we teach them about the same thing their adults are learning, and we're like a safe, warm, comforting place for them to be, and they just learn, obviously, the same thing that their parents are learning, and we're learning how to fix their different, like, if they have bad coping mechanisms, we'll go through and we're learning better ones, and we'll just sit there and go over different life skills for them so they have good coping skills. Yeah.
And they're faithful to be with us every Friday, and a lot of our participants wouldn't be able to come if we didn't have a place for their children. And it's not just daycare, they're teaching them lessons. Next, I have the privilege of introducing Aaron Opplinger, who is our ministry leader, along with his wife, Chrissy. And they're usually busy running around. Chrissy's running around somewhere now, I'm sure. I'm sorry. When I first came to Celebrate Recovery, I didn't think that I needed it. I thought I was coming to support my husband. But Aaron and Chrissy's story gave me the hope that I needed to keep coming back. And I am so grateful for their leadership of this ministry. It is a very challenging ministry to lead. And they have been faithful for 15 years. I wouldn't be where I am today as a believer without Aaron and Chrissy.
Thanks, Tracy. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, and through Christ's power, I've overcome. He's overcome in me addiction to alcohol and drug abuse. In more recent weeks, days, months, years, I struggle with hurt, codependency, insecurity. I deal with those on a daily basis. I don't want to take too much time talking about me. You get to hear from these leaders. Their stories are very diversified, just as this crowd is here this morning. One way that when we introduce Celebrate Recovery to churches is we use a book called Life's Healing Choices. And it's a way that you can see if these principles might be something that you would like to explore further. And so at the beginning of February, we're going to offer a men's class and a women's class to go through Life's Healing Choices. It takes about 8 weeks. So it's not a year of your time. It's just enough to see if these principles will work for you. Now, I believe and I know that they do work, and I'm going to tell you they will work for you. But what Life's Healing Choices is about, what Tracy was talking about, what Kathy was talking about, it's not necessarily, and it really doesn't dwell on an addiction of any kind. It's the kind of thing that we all deal with day to day. As friends come and go, loved ones come and go, people we love pass, all of those feelings. And where does that put us in our relationship with God? So as you leave here and you go into the potato bar after a little while, and we've got one more speaker or two more, I hope, if Chrissy comes back. They're gonna, Tracy and Kathy, Morgan, maybe Austin will be there. They're gonna have a table set up with a sign-up sheet. And we ask if you'd be interested in learning more and exploring and going to that class, just sign your name and let them know how they can get a hold of you, because we want to get the book for you to go through with us. You're going to do a little bit of homework, and you're going to come back and you're going to share with each small group. Like I said, it takes about 8 weeks. We did it at the beginning of this past year, in January, the men of our Celebrate Recovery, and there were probably 15 of us that started, and I think there were probably 13 of us that finished. Most of us finished that class. And it was very powerful for me at the time, what I was dealing with, and it helped me to get into 2024 on a much better footing than it started off, because it did not start off good for me. So if that's something you would like to be a part of, make sure you stop at the sign-up table and sign up for that class. Now I'm going to ask Austin to come forward, and I promise we're wrapping up. We're almost done, Bob. Not that he's given me the watch sign or anything, but I've gotten to know Austin over the last, 5 years, 4 years, 4. And you're not going to get to hear his whole detailed story this morning, but he's going to give you a little snippet, and then he's going to talk a little bit about Paraguay too, and something really special that we're going to share with you also after the end of the service. So I give you Austin.
We're not wrapping up, so sit tight. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus. I struggle with substance abuse, anger, lust, and codependency. My name is Austin. Hi. So hearing some of these other leaders speak, there's a lot of good nuggets of wisdom in there. The first thing that struck me was Pastor Bob relaying on who was I, who am I now, who am I becoming. Another thing, Tracy hitting on, Celebrate Recovery is not just for substance abuse or addiction. It's for a myriad of issues. My, in particular, story kind of centers around substance abuse. But the reality is those things were just symptoms, right? It all comes down to an issue of the heart. I had a turbulent childhood. My parents divorced when I was very young. That's a common story, and it's tragic because that creates inconsistency and it creates just lack of stability, fosters an insecurity and a need for, an unhealthy need for attention and love in a child. And in a nutshell, that was a lot of my story. And I started self-medicating pretty early on with alcohol and marijuana and you name it. Started putting myself around the wrong types of crowds who were negative influences. I had a family history of addiction with nicotine, alcohol. That was pretty much it. But all of this led to when things started to fall apart for me. In 2018, I received my first DUI. My second DUI following shortly after that, just about a year later. And let's be real here, I drank and drove way more times than I got caught, and that's just reality, okay? I'm very blessed that I was never in an accident, I never harmed myself, and I never harmed another person. But nonetheless, this resulted in my driver's license being revoked for the better part of 4 years. Which, by the way, when I started coming to Celebrate Recovery, Aaron helped me a lot getting here. I didn't drive dirty, I played by the rules, and I remember riding the train up here to Memorial Metrolink station, standing out there in the cold with my guitar, and he'd come and pick me up every Friday to come here, and he'd take me home all the way in Mascoutah, about 35 minutes. A lot of my story centers around anger and a lack of emotional management, right? So if you want to hear my full testimony, I invite you to come to CR and hear it sometime. But at a certain point, I was facing multiple criminal charges. This is where it turned around. I say in my testimony, at this point, I was crying out to Jesus, but I had no relationship with him. I had no relationship with God. My experience with church had been like many folks, unfortunately, where the behavior we see in church is inconsistent with the behaviors we see in the home or outside of church. And this can create a lot of resentment and disbelief. I considered myself an atheist for a long time. I thought all of the things that non-believers say about Christians, they use God as an excuse for poor behavior, what have you, And I know that sounds harsh, but these are just realities, guys. Until CR people in the room, what was our lesson on Friday night? Shout it out. Powerless. Until I hit my bottom and I was powerless, and I still didn't want to admit it. I just didn't know what else to do. And so, like any person that is desperate for change but has no relationship with God, I spent probably hundreds or thousands of dollars on self-help books and shut myself in my room and read until my eyes couldn't read anymore. About a year after that is when my sister informed me about Celebrate Recovery, which I had never heard of, and at this point in my life, I was just willing to give anything a shot. So I showed up, sat in the back row, didn't talk to anybody. I don't remember what songs were sung. I don't remember what the lesson was about or if there was a testimony. Really, the only thing I remember about that night is just weeping. And I didn't know where to go because after the lesson, because I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't say, hey, where should I go? Where do I belong? So I ended up in the counseling room, which is another thing that is available. If you're not comfortable being in the small share groups, or maybe if you need like a little bit more of intensive counseling, we also do have a licensed counselor that comes in a separate room for those of who seek that kind of service. But long story short, come back to today, I'm sure many of us can relate to the Apostle Paul, especially men, I'm sure. You look at my past life and you've got addiction, you've got violence, you've got anger and wrath and malice. And today, look guys, I'm as messed up today as I was back then. It's just that I make different choices now. And I get the honor and the privilege to use my experience and my knowledge, the things I've learned through difficult circumstances, to try and help others towards this type of freedom. In, I guess it was 2023, I had a dream which I interpreted as a means to working in the recovery field vocationally. So I applied for a job at Chestnut Health Systems as a recovery coach. Turns out I was unqualified for that. So my interviewer offered me another position, which was working with unhoused individuals and basically doing behavioral health outreach on the Metrolink, the public transit system. So I now do that in St. Clair County. I ride around in a company van and just talk to anybody I can. And guys, by the way, we got to start treating each other better. That's not a dig on anybody sitting in this room, but it just as a whole, we got to start treating each other better. When you see somebody on the street, just recognize that that's a person. Recently, I accepted a position in crisis intervention, PRN, so we'll get called out to hospitals or residences, and we're primarily dealing with individuals who want to end their life, are suicidal, they're addicted, they're looking to get into recovery, or maybe they're not. So last summer, I'll go ahead and transition on to you. We heard a lot about the Paraguay trip this past summer, and I was very blessed and honored to get to go to Paraguay. And if you've been out there to our CR table, you might have noticed buckets full of these little guys, these little Jesus guys, yeah. And so Chrissy's gonna tell you more about those guys, but we took a couple of big bags full of those down to Paraguay. It was a last minute thing that we came up with. And even though we all know this is just a little rubber toy, right? It represents something. And these bags of little Jesuses flew all the way down to Paraguay with us, and we got to spread that joy to other people. And Chrissy's gonna tell us more about those.
Thank you, Austin. Hello, my name is Chrissy. I'm a grateful believer that struggles with codependency. Hi. I'm here to wrap it up, so that's good for all of you guys. So many years ago when Aaron and I started going to the conventions for Celebrate Recovery, this real tall guy would come up to you and say, "Have you had a little Jesus today?" And we were like, looking at him like, yeah, like we didn't know what he was gonna say. Why are you saying this? Of course, I've studied the Bible today. Did I do that? But anyway, so he would give you this little Jesus, and we knew about it, and like it was just kind of a cute thing to do. Well, Austin went with us last year to the convention, and he was like, "Have you seen this thing?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He was very excited about it, and he took it to a whole nother level. So when we went to Paraguay, we had them in bags, or Austin did, and he told us about it. Well, anyone that's been to Paraguay, most of you know that it's not an easy process to get there. You buy the ticket, that doesn't mean you're going that day, that time, on that plane with those people. And so it makes it very hard on you. Well, we got to St. Louis, and we had all the stuff that we had collected from you guys, giving stuff, and they said, you can't go, we've canceled your flight. So because the connection won't work, you only have 45 minutes to get across whatever Atlanta airport or whatever airport we were going to. It's not going to work, so we've canceled it. So I turned around to the ladies that were behind us, and I said, guys, my team, I said, pray, just pray, pray. It's not working. So we had a woman there from St. Louis, and she was on her cell phone, she was on the regular phone, and she saw everything that we were bringing, and she helped us to get a new flight. Well, we got a flight to Brazil. We got to spend the night there in a nice hotel. And then we got up and went to the airport, and guess what? Oh, and we gave her these little Jesuses, okay? So we gave her those, and we gave her some pins because she didn't have any pins. I'm like, I have CR pins. Here's a whole bunch. So then we get to Brazil, and then when we get to Brazil, they said, you can't leave here. You don't have the yellow fever shot. Oh, my gosh. So this is like really early in the morning. I'm calling the missionaries, and I'm like, what do we do? Like, this is a new one. She's like, you're traveling. Like, this can't happen. Well, this lady speaks another language, and she's shaking her head no a lot. So we gave her Jesus. And all of a sudden, after about an hour and a half, things started working. I didn't speak her language, but she knew who this was. That's all I had to say. Those same ladies behind me were praying again, of course. So we learned that these little Jesuses helped us. So she couldn't take all of our luggage because we had the big containers. She said, you have to go over to this place with the large luggage and give it. They'll take it. Nobody liked our big containers. So we took the big containers, and before we got there, I ran up to them and I was like, here, take this. And I'm sure they were like, why is she giving us this little rubber Jesus? And then comes our stuff that we have to give. And I'm like, take care of this stuff. Get it down there. So needless to say, we got to Paraguay. So when we got to Paraguay, we did everything that you've heard today. We taught them how to do this and all the little things that they've shared with you. But we also gave these little Jesuses out, which don't seem like a whole lot. But they do. It matters. When we would go to a church and we couldn't speak the language, and we would give these away, turn around and they'd be up on the windowsill. They would be on the altar. You go to the bathroom, little Jesus was in the bathroom with you. So it was kind of funny, and then one of the people from Paraguay was taking a picture of it everywhere, and he would post it on Facebook, and I'm like, that's just so funny. But it was our way of talking about Jesus when you can't talk about Jesus, when you don't have time to talk about Jesus. So I have one of these on my desk at school, and I'm a school teacher in a public school, and you're not supposed to talk about that kind of stuff, but he sits on my desk, and I have more of them in my drawer because when people ask me about them or him, is that Jesus? That's what they say. Is that Jesus on your desk? I'm like, yeah, do you want one? Here it is. So I give it to him. But I had this lady that is a very good friend of mine. I've known her the whole time I've been at Belleville East, and she goes, is that Jesus? I said, yeah, would you like one? She goes, well, I don't believe in Jesus. And I go, okay, well, I do. She goes, can I have one? And I'm like, sure. And I go, where are you going to put it? And she goes, on my desk. And I said, just so you know, he's going to stare you down till you believe in him. So these are all quick little stories, but we are going to hand these out to you because you can leave this with someone that waits on you at a restaurant. You can. I've seen these in gas stations. I've gone into a gas station and little Jesus is sitting there, which it just makes me laugh. Like somebody's doing what I'm doing. So you may not have time to talk to someone, but it may be the icebreaker that you need. So we're going to give each one of you at least 3 of these when you leave. So make sure that you don't forget. Put them in your pocket. You never know who you're going to bump into. Ask God to plant someone for you to talk to because we are all missionaries here and we want to spread the love of Jesus. And if it's just this little rubber figure, it'll help you. So thank you for letting me share.